Fire alarm systems, control functions. The fire alarm control unit processes all incoming and outgoing signals, alarm, supervisory, and trouble signals. The fire alarm control unit also controls any additional fire protection features on the system, such as fire smoke dampers, fire doors, fire shutters, etc. The fire alarm control unit is required to have a secondary power supply. In most cases, this is achieved through the use of batteries. Ensure the date of manufacture is clearly noted on the batteries. Operational tests for fire alarm systems include a 24-hour battery test and then subjected to a 5-minute test in alarm mode for systems utilizing horns and strobes. The operational test is increased to 15 minutes where speaker strobes are installed. Ensure that battery chargers match the charging capacity, that the battery cells suitably insulated against ground faults, and that the battery terminals are connected and secured against movement that can cause disconnection. Operational testing is performed at the end of the 24-hour period to simulate a worst-case condition on the battery. Battery tests may not be excluded merely because the batteries themselves are new. Verify the batteries are marked with the year and month of manufacture utilizing the month-year format. Most batteries are good for 5 years. Refer to NFPA 72, Section 10.6.10.1.1.
Control functions, such as those for fire and smoke dampers. Fire and smoke damper operation within the dedicated circuit needs to be observed and verified. Ensure the correct position of the dampers is in accordance with the manufacturer's installation specifications. Ensure complete removal of accessible portions of abandoned fire alarm cables when systems are modified. 2019 California Electrical Code Section 760.3a, spread of fire or products of combustion will refer you to Section 300.21. Wiring as part of fire alarm systems must meet the combustibility criteria assigned therein. 760.25 notes that accessible portions of abandoned fire alarm cables must be removed, and Section 800.25 for abandoned cables notes that the accessible portion of abandoned communication cables shall be removed, and where the cables are intended for future use with a tag, that tag be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. During modernizations and alterations, it is permitted to retain abandoned cables for future use as long as they are appropriately tagged and identified. NFPA 72, Section 17.4.7 notes that where fire detectors are installed in concealed locations greater than 10 feet above the finished floor, or in arrangements where the detector's alarm or supervisory indicator is not visible to responding personnel, that the detectors be provided with remote alarm or supervisory indication in a location acceptable to the AHJ. These locations must be shown on mechanical and the as-built drawings. California Mechanical Code Section 606.5, fire and smoke dampers shall be provided with an approved means of access large enough to allow inspection and maintenance of the damper and its operating parts. The access shall not affect the integrity of the fire resistance rated assembly, and the access openings shall not reduce the fire resistance rating of the assembly. This access is important not only for maintenance of the damper, but to facilitate repair, operation, testing, and maintenance of fire alarm components associated with smoke dampers and combination fire smoke dampers. The access door must be labeled with an approved sign, permanently identified in minimum 1/2 inch letters, and should identify the type of damper: smoke damper, fire damper or fire smoke damper. The correct position of the damper installation is typically shown by an arrow. Look for an arrow or any other signs of proper installation position. The arrow should point up. Here's a generic detail of a fire damper installation. Note the actuator and the access door and the duct-mounted smoke detector. Damper controls shall be accessible for cleaning and installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Locations must be clearly identified and recorded. Tight fitting and approved for the required duct construction is necessary. The SMACNA manual for fire damper installation can provide guidance on these requirements. The 2019 California Mechanical Code, section 60505, which is what we talked about prior, again reiterates the need for the damper access opening, proper labeling, and that the damper access panel indicate the type of damper. Ensure the correct sequence of door latching is being provided. Refer to the manufacturer's installation specifications. Now, for a single door, this generally doesn't pose a problem. However, if this were a set of double doors that have to close in a sequential order, that sequential order would need to be verified by the project inspector. Note here the magnetic door hold-open device. These are connected to the fire alarm control panel. When the panel goes into alarm, power is cut to this device and the door releases and closes to protect the opening. Swinging doors and roll-down doors must not have any mechanisms that lock them in the open position. These doors must always be able to self or automatically close. Listed hold-open devices that release upon activation of the fire alarm system certainly are permitted, as shown in this picture. Fire resistance rated doors cannot have any dogging devices to allow the door to swing free. Fire rated doors, such as the one pictured here, are required to be automatic or self-closing and must positively latch in the closed position. This per NFPA 80, section 6.1.3.2 and 6.1.3.3.1. Inspection and operation should be per section 5.2.3.5.2. Rated doors may not have vents, in other words, no louvers. Please verify the proper latching sequence, and during your inspection, you may need to verify that the chipboard fits into the door jamb a minimum of 1/2 inch, or as directed in the manufacturer's installation instructions. When using counter roll-down doors, ensure that the door fits snugly to the wall and the countertop. An improper seal will allow smoke, heat, and gases to penetrate the assembly. Smoke detector activation is required for closing. Where fusible links are installed on both sides of the wall, provide a sleeve to create an open pathway for the cable or chain connecting the fusible link. Please refer to the 2016 edition of NFPA 80 for diameter fitting requirements. Things to be cautious of here on these types of installations are such as when the counter is not installed level. The counter is not installed level, the roll-down door will not close snugly against the countertop properly. In these installations, the installer will often add shims under the counter to achieve a level condition. However, if this happens, the project inspector needs to verify that the area has been sealed for the rating of the wall in which it is installed. Is the sill counter material appropriate? If it is a fire-rated door, should there really be a combustible sill or countertop? Consider fire-rated doors closing onto combustible sills. The combustible sill could burn away, thus creating a void and violating the intent of the roll-down fire door. Make sure to check the manufacturer's installation details for proper sill and counters. Refer to NFPA 80 for all requirements. Per NFPA 80, Section 5.1.5.1, Field Modifications. In cases where field modifications to a fire door or fire door assembly is desired, the laboratory with which the product or component being modified is listed shall be contacted through the manufacturer, and a written or graphic description of the modification must be presented to the laboratory. Field verifications may be permitted without a field visit from the laboratory upon written authorization. Where the manufacturer is no longer available, the laboratory shall be permitted to provide an engineering evaluation supporting the field modification. Where elevators are provided in buildings, it is important that the fire alarm testing includes verification of elevator emergency recall operations. Ensure that only listed smoke detectors are designed for elevator pits used. In CBC Section 907.3.3, Elevator Emergency Operation, an approved automatic detector installed for elevator emergency operations is to be installed in accordance with the provisions of California Code of Regulations, Title 8, Division 1, Chapter 4, Subchapter 6. These are the elevator safety orders, and NFPA 72. DOSH ASME A17.1 2004, the current adopted edition, requires smoke and heat detectors at tops of hoistways where sprinklers are provided. This connects to the shunt trip, which eliminates all power to the elevator car or elevator bank. No smoke or heat detectors will be required in the elevator pit. Smoke and heat detectors at the top of the hoistways shall be located within 24 inches from the sprinkler and must be located in a cage to avoid physical injuries to maintenance workers. Coordinate the elevator recall and power shutoff with the elevator mechanics. NFPA 72, Section 21.3.3, Phase 1 Emergency Recall. Elevator lobby, elevator hoistways, elevator machine rooms, elevator control rooms, and elevator control space smoke detectors or other automatic fire detection permitted shall be used to initiate Phase 1 emergency recall operations. An exception to this is a water flow switch, which is permitted to initiate elevator recall. NFPA 72, Section 21.3.8, notes that smoke detectors shall not be installed in elevator hoistways to initiate elevator recall unless a smoke detector is listed for that environment.